So welcome to this lecture on digital computer electronics. We are discussing the sequential logic circuits. We'll be talking about register types and memory concepts. What's a register? Digital circuit with basic functions of data storage and data movement is called a register. The flip-flop is generally used to store a bit with the help of a clock pulse. The rising edge of clock pulse passes the input to output. The sequential connection of such flip-flops gives rise to a shift register. Storage capacity of a register is the number of bits it can store. A flip-flop stores 1 bit and a register of 4 bits capacity will use such 4 flip-flops in sequence. Similarly, an 8-bit 1 byte register can be made by using sequence of 8 flip-flops. The capacity of a flip-flop to shift data with the help of a clock pulse gives registers a property of shifting data inside as well as from the input device. And to the output of the devices. Thus, a register of flip-flops is mostly termed as shift register. There are 4 types of registers: serial input and serial output registers, second serial input parallel output registers, then third type parallel input serial output registers, and the last 4th type parallel input parallel output registers. So how a register works is that if we have a single bit register, 1 bit register, a D flip-flop, and we have at its input some information, the information in zeros and ones, and then we have a clock input present, then what will happen that with 1 at the input and the clock present, if the flip-flop is edge triggered, so the rising or the falling edge will load the information. So if 1 was there and the rising clock pulse came, the information at the output will go high with the rising edge of the information. 1 was available at the input, and then the rising edge of the flip-flop arrived, the output went high, means Q0 went high. It will remain high even if the clock pulse is present but not having the rising edge. So we see that for the 2 ones and half of the 0 at the input stage, the output stage continuously remains 1. And 0 is detected with the rising edge of a clock pulse, the output goes low and remains low till another rising edge of the clock pulse and one present at the input will make it high. In such a way, we can have the flip-flops connected in this way, and the register will work, shift the data from the input to the output of the stages. So this is the first type, serial input and serial output register. In this we have now the 4-bit register. 4 flip-flops are present. You see that the clock is same to all the flip-flops, and all flip-flops have a D input, serial input. So the bit coming at the D will shift with every clock pulse to first Q0, then Q1, then Q2 and Q3. So with every clock pulse, whatever will be present at D will shift to the register in stages. So if we have a 4 bits of information, serial information at D in 4 clock pulses, that information will get fully transferred to Q0, Q1, Q2 and Q3. The next type of the registers is a serial input parallel output register. Here the input is given in the same way as in the serial in serial out register, but what one thing is done here, that instead of taking out the data from Q3 serially, we take the data at the output stage of every flip-flop, or that is, we are taking the parallel outputs. So we are feeding data serially but taking the data in parallel. Another type of registers is parallel input serial output register. This sort of a register is having the additional combinational circuits, because we are feeding the parallel data to a register which is actually serially configured. So with every stage we have to add some combinational circuit to make it working. The last type is parallel input and parallel output register. Here every individual flip-flop has an input and an output which is not dependent on the other flip-flop. Only the dependence is that of the clock. So whatever data is given at the input D0, D1, D2, D3 of every D flip-flop, the output of Q0, Q1, Q2, Q3 is generated with a single clock pulse. All these flip-flops are independently working, and this is the fastest register, because in the single pulse it will change the whole data which is present at the input to the output. So we'll now discuss something about the memory and storage. In the computer system, memory generally refers to semiconductor latches, and storage refers to permanent mass memories. But if some authors are writing differently, you are not to get disturbed. Types of memories. First one, volatile memories. Those memories that lose their stored data if the power is turned off are said to be volatile. So RAM is such type of memory. Random access memory is a volatile memory. The second type is non-volatile memory. Those memories that does not lose their stored data if the power is turned off are said to be non-volatile. ROM, read-only memory, is a non-volatile memory. In the computer system, semiconductor memories refers to the devices that store binary data in large quantities. In actual applications, these can either be latches or capacitors. The memory units are: the smallest unit is bit, the smallest presentation unit is a nibble, group of 4 bits, and standard unit is a byte, group of 8 bits. Information unit is word. You know what a word can be? 2 or more bytes. Lowest market unit is kilobytes and 1000 bytes. Common market unit is megabyte, MB, 1000 kilobytes. So the bigger market unit is gigabyte or GB, 1000 megabytes. So extra bigger unit, market unit, is terabyte, which is actually equivalent to 1000 gigabytes. We talk about the memory organization. The memory is actually constructed as an array of storage elements called cells. A cell is a memory space that can store 1 bit of data. The cell in turn can be grouped in many ways to form a matrix of memory cells. If we take an example of 64-bit memory, it can be constructed as 8 into 8-bit matrix, or 16 into 4-bit matrix, or 64 into 1 matrix. So the organization will be like this: arrays of 8, arrays of 4, and array of 1. So what is memory address? We sometimes call it a pointer. The location of unit data in a memory array is known as address of the memory. Address is given to a unit of data according to its organization. Organization, I told you, can be in the different ways. For example, if we have an array of memory bytes, means 8 bits, and address will locate a byte of memory rather than an individual bit. For bitwise location, the memory must be in the bit organized form. The memory capacity is defined as the total number of data units that can be stored in it. For example, if we have a memory of 64 storage cells, its capacity will be written with respect to its organization in the following ways: byte-wise memory, 8 bytes, and if it is nibble-wise, then it is 16 nibbles, and if it is bit-wise, then it is 64 bits. How the memory works actually, memory organization. For the operation of the memory, it must have the following requisites: an address bus to locate its memory units, a data bus to store or retrieve data units, an address decoder to decode the address. Operation to be performed by the memory is of 2 types. Write data means store data in the memory, or whatever is stored in the memory To retrieve that data we call as read operation. Write operation to save the data in the memory, and read operation to retrieve data from the memory. So the memory is organized like this as a memory array, and we have a data bus. Bidirectional means data can be stored in the memory and data can be retrieved from the memory. So bidirectional bus, data bus. And then we have the two operations, whether we have to read or write operations. The important thing is the address or the pointer, is how a memory location can be selected. So for that, the address bus is unidirectional. It's not bidirectional, it's unidirectional because it only locates the memory, and then the operations will make the data to flow in or flow out of the memory. With this we come to the end of this lecture. Thank you very much.